It's so nice to see you. If I have any other speakers out front, please come up here now. I'm going to start by thanking our wonderful musicians, Danaher and Jordan. Thank you for playing today. Oh, you sound great. Thank you so much. And I'm Betty Folliard, founder of ERA Minnesota, co-founder of Minnesotans for Equal Rights. Yeah! And welcome to our ERA semi-quincentennial celebration. We are going to do this ERA style, right?
Yes.
Because in 250 years of this country, we still don't have constitutional equality in our state constitution or our federal constitution. So these wonderful women who have come around the country, come all across the country now to raise the banner for the Equal Rights Amendment, are going to be talking in a few minutes. And I want you all to welcome them because they have an extraordinary tale to tell. And then we have some wonderful speakers here. As I look at this, let me just say, let's celebrate the wonderful national suffragists while we point out that we still don't have constitutional equality. Do you know this week Vermont became the 30th state in the nation to pass a state ERA through their legislature? 30 states now have a state ERA. We have 38 states at the federal level already ratified, and you'll hear more about that. And now at this time, as we see our rights being rescinded, voting rights, women's rights, LGBTQ rights, bodily autonomy rights, immigrant rights being rescinded, now more than ever, we need the Equal Rights Amendment. So let's get her done. So I'm going to begin with our state senator because she has to get back into session pretty quick. And I just want you to know that Senator Mary Kunesh is the chief author of the state ERA in our state offices. Come on up, Mary.
Well, thank you all for being here today. Greetings to all of you in the language of my ancestors, my Lakota ancestors. I welcome you with a warm heart and a handy handshake. Today we gathered to recognize a monumental milestone, 250 years of this nation. But first, I want to acknowledge and honor the ancestral lands of the indigenous people of North America who have inhabited these lands, called the United States of America, for over 30,000 years. Minnesota is the original homelands of the Dakotas, and then the Anishinaabe and the Ho-Chunk, and we welcome the many other Native nations who call this state their home. This land has been home to vibrant cultures and languages and traditions long before the arrival of settlers. And so I hope you all join me in recognizing the deep connection that our indigenous communities have to this land and their continued advocacy, and acknowledge the ongoing impact of colonization as we also mark the nation's semi-quincentennial. We must remember not just the achievements that we have gained, but also our ongoing struggles. As we reflect on history, we must confront a painful truth. Our Minnesota State Constitution still lacks the guarantee of equal rights for all. Despite our progress, we stand at a crossroad where equality remains an aspiration rather than a reality. First, let's take a minute to honor the remarkable women and men who fought tirelessly for suffrage and equality throughout our history. We all know the national suffragists, pioneers like Susan B. Anthony, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and Sojourner Truth. But I'd also like to recognize Elizabeth Peritorovich, a Tlingit woman from Alaska. She's a pioneering civic rights leader who successfully championed the United States' first anti-discrimination law. And as a result, Alaska's Anti-Discrimination Act of 1945 came about decades before the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And I'd like to remember Zikala Shah, who is a Yankton, Dakota woman, a writer, a musician, political activist who advocated for women's suffragette and indigenous citizenship. She played a key role in the passage of the 1924 Indian Citizenship Act. And lastly, LaDonna Harris, a Comanche woman, who was the founder of the American for Indian Opportunity. She dedicated her life to advancing the cultural, political, and economic rights of indigenous people worldwide. The courage of these women in the face of adversity ignited movements such as this and were transforming our society, and yet the vision of equality remains unfulfilled. Today we are here to celebrate their legacy, and we must recognize the renewed urgency of Minnesota's Equal Right Amendment. Minnesota has just experienced the most atrocious, terrorizing situation, an invasion of any kind of equal rights or human rights like never before. The federal administration's policies and actions during Metro Surge were clearly a total disregard for the hard-fought rights regarding equal human rights. It is actively working to rescind so many women's rights that have been hard fought for across our nation. Rights like health care access, reproductive freedom, workplace protection, pay equality, immigrant rights, and so many others. In this hostile environment, the Trump administration rhetoric often perpetuates stereotypes and stigma against women and immigrants, and this is fostering a culture of intolerance like we have not seen in decades. The administration's policy and action significantly undermined our Equal Rights Amendment, especially for our women and immigrants. And by rolling back reproductive protections, promoting discriminatory practices, and creating hostile environments, these actions highlight the ongoing struggle for equality in the United States. And I know many of you join me in that and will not rest until we have them. The challenges faced during this period serve as a reminder of the importance of vigilance and advocacy and the rights for equality at all. So Minnesota's ERA serves as a powerful reminder that equality is not merely a privilege, it is a right. It stands as a declaration that all persons shall be guaranteed equal rights under the laws of this state and shall not be discriminated against on account of race, color, national origin, ancestry, disability, or sex. And that includes pregnancy, gender, and sexual orientation. Yes. Discrimination has no part in our lives. So I ask each of you to continue to advocate for these rights moving forward, because as the women of the past fought hard for us today, we must fight for future generations. Yes. Thank you so much. We'll feel it.
And next, quickly, we're going to also have our chief author in the Minnesota House. And let me just say, she's been up all night fighting for guns, for gun control in this state. So she's a little bit tired, but she's resolved out. Lee Finke, Representative Lee Finke.
Hello, friends. My name is Lee Finke. I use she, her pronouns. I represent District 66A in the Minnesota House. I'm very happy to be here with you today. Yes, as you heard, we are currently in the middle of a sit-in in the Minnesota House demanding action from Speaker Lisa Damuth on a package of gun violence prevention bills that is sitting on her desk. Yes. This is something that our caucus is taking up together. There are many, or several at least, folks from my caucus here. Katie Jones and Larry Kraft and Meg. I'm sorry I get your name wrong every time. Luger.
Nikolai.
Yeah. That's embarrassing for me and I apologize. Luger Nikolai. Yes. Our newest member. But we've been up. I slept almost 2 hours last night making sure that we were doing our work. And, you know, this is what we're doing right now at the Capitol, but it is intimately intertwined with the work of the ERA and has been since the beginning of the push for the ERA. And one of the things that I talk about, I gave my speech on the floor yesterday, but whenever I'm talking about gun violence and the scourge of epidemic of gun violence, for me it is a conversation about gender-based violence and about the most common form of violence we see in the world, which is intimate partner violence. And it is intertwined with everything we do. It is intertwined with every community on earth. And it does not matter who you are, what gender you are, what color you are. Intimate partner violence affects us. It affects us. It affects us. So this is just where my head is right now. So I appreciate you taking some of this in with me. We are fighting like hell in Minnesota to pass this ERA. Right, we fought like hell in 23, 24 to get this over the finish line, and we were that close to getting it done. And we are going to come back after this election, after we win a pro-equality majority back in both chambers and pass the Equal Rights Amendment once and for all. We've got some more sit-in members over here from our caucus. Yes, everyone from the caucus, say hello. David Godfrey. Oh, yeah, Hilda, yes. Yes, hello. Sorry, I really am very, very exhausted. The last thing I want to say, and I'll just get out of here, is that it means a great deal to me as a trans woman to be here standing in front of you, to be here as the Reproductive Freedom Chair Caucus in the House, and to be here as the author of the ERA. The ERA community here in Minnesota has always been incredibly generous and inclusive to my community. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful to you for that specifically, but also to the work of Megan and many others who have built a world in Minnesota that we have built together that is safe and welcoming for trans people and for all people. And we are building that work into the long term in the future by putting our ERA in the Constitution. So I am going to carry this bill until it is done. It is going to be done in 27. And thank you for coming.
Okay, now our next speaker, I'm just delighted to have here, is the president of the AFL-CIO of Minnesota, Bernie Burnham.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. As you heard, I'm Bernie Burnham, and I'm the president of our Minnesota AFL-CIO, the state's labor federation of more than 1,000 local unions who collectively represent about 300,000 union members in nearly every industry in every corner of our state. I'd like to thank ERA Minnesota and this coalition of partners for bringing us together today. I also want to recognize the incredible symbolism of the Golden Flyer arriving here in our capital. More than a century ago, suffragists traveled this country demanding something that should have been a self-evident right at our nation's founding: equality and the rights to fully participate in our democracy. These heroes organized for decades to secure the right to vote. They marched, they spoke, and they never let up. At first, they were ignored. They were mocked. They were told to wait their turn, but they never let up, and our nation ratified the 19th Amendment. That work continues today with us. As our nation approaches its 250th anniversary, women, LGBTQ people, disabled people, and communities of color still lack explicit equal rights in both the federal and state constitutions. Given the attacks on our fundamental rights over the last year and the threats to our democracy, the lack of constitutional protections should concern every single one of us. In the labor movement, we know all too well that a boss's verbal promise is temporary, but a union contract secures those promises. Constitutional rights should work that way. We shouldn't have to depend on who wins the next election, who sits on the next court, or which politicians happen to hold power at a given moment to determine whether their rights and dignity are respected. Equality should never be temporary, it should never be conditional, and it should never be negotiable. That's why the Minnesota AFL-CIO and many of our affiliated unions are proud members of this coalition. We know that our fights are connected. Attacks on reproductive freedom, attacks on LGBTQ people, attacks on immigrants, attacks on voting rights, and attacks on workers' rights all come from the same dangerous notion that some people deserve less freedom than others. And while we know this fight is far from over, Minnesota's labor movement is in it for the long haul. Because solidarity means we keep going until everyone's rights are protected, no exceptions. Thank you very much.
And Bernie has to dash, so that's why we stuck her in there. But I want to take a moment now and turn the conversation to the federal ERA. And I want to introduce two suffragists who have traveled the same route that the suffragists traveled 110 years ago. And we've got here today Kathy Bonk and Gerald Shriver from ERA Now. Please welcome our guests, special guests.
Okay, thank you very much. This is great to be here. I'm going to talk about the ride from 110 years ago, and two women, Alice and Nell, left Manhattan on April 6, 1960. They had this little car, almost exactly like that. They were supported by Carrie Chapman Catt, who was part of NASA, which was the League of Women Voters. They packed it with enough items to give away to people to tell their story. They said, we need to get the story out. We can stand on soapboxes in Manhattan all we want, but we're not getting the story further than the street door. So they got in this car. NASA supported them every 100 miles. They were given a place to stay by the local suffrage organization. They put on their dresses. This was not the group of Alice Paul, who wanted to go chain herself and her group to Woodrow Wilson's White House. They were not throwing rocks. They were not going 100 strikes. They were going into a town. They were going to be polite. They were going to eat cookies and drink a lot of tea and tell their story. And if they thought they were losing their audience, they would say, come see my car. And that worked. They also always invited the press to come, because they said even if the audience is small, the press would get the story out. So they got in this car with all this amazing stuff, and they got stuck in snowstorms. They got stuck in the middle of rivers. They passed the hat every night when they were somewhere hoping to get a few coins for some fuel. And outside Mobile, Alabama, somebody gave them a cat. So here now we have two single women and a cat out for a political cause, if that strikes anybody's imagination. They changed their route when they got to Texas because they were afraid of Pancho Villa along the border. So they went a little bit north. The cat's basket one morning had a bullet hole in it. They got to Phoenix, Arizona and said, we're almost halfway. We can do this. And then they got lost in the desert between Phoenix and California. They were looking for the road. The roads were, you can imagine the roads were difficult. Anything outside of a city, and even in the city, they were dirt. Rural roads were high humps because they were made with wagon wheels, and the car would teeter-totter over the high center. So they're in the middle of the desert, heading for Yuma, and they find they have a pint of water left with them. Huh. They're stuck. Two men go by in a larger vehicle at the time, and they said, stop, can you help us? And the men said, no, we're busy. We have someplace to be. So they're there's a well 6 miles back there. You can go find it. So they did. They packed up their water bag and their cat, and they walked 6.5 miles through the desert to a well that had a dead chicken in it. And they said, you know, that water was pretty damn sweet. And water in the desert's funny water. The more you drink of it, the thirstier you get. They finally did make it to San Diego. They went to the exposition there. They had been sort of bumped off the front page of newspapers because of World War I starting in Europe, and people were worried about preparedness. They ended up going north. They went to Seattle. They turned right, and they came through this area. And they were in Minneapolis, St. Paul, around the beginning of September. This is 1916. They did that. They made it back to New York. It was almost 6 months. It was 10,700 miles over these terrible roads, getting stuck, having gear pins pop, people throwing things at them occasionally. But they persisted. They said, this is right. This is not fair. Women deserve the right to vote. And we are going to keep at it. And we're going to keep eating those cookies and drink that tea. And we're going to convince people, those, especially the men, that we deserve the right to vote. And what we're doing is following that route that they took, a little loosely, with a car that is not the same car, but pretty darn close. And if those ladies could do that in 1916 over these terrible roads, not sure exactly where they're going, no GPS, no air conditioning, no telephone to speak of, we can do this. We can get out there and tell the story about what's right and what is fair, because that's what it's about. It's the Equal Rights Amendment is just fair. So thank you for inviting us here. It's wonderful.
As was said earlier, here in Minnesota, you are this close. Well, at the federal level, we are this close, and it is within our reach. And I want to say that if we all work together, both here in Minnesota and federally, we can get both next year. Yeah. We are here on what we're calling Driving the Vote for Equality. And we have materials, and we're asking you to please sign for ERA, because that's one of the ways we are going to get the federal amendment affirmed and recognized by Congress. So people have been asking me, okay, what is the ERA going to do? Well, we call it the ABCs of the ERA. And the E is about economic equality, especially right now. We heard from our union sisters, we need pay equity, yes. We need paychecks, we need better retirement, we need economic independence. The R is for rights. We all know what happened with Dobbs. We need to reestablish those rights for that and for gender violence that is increasing everywhere in every which way. And the A is for all of us. All of us right now will benefit with a federal equal rights amendment for a variety of reasons. But isn't it already in the Constitution? President Biden said it's the law of the land. Well, sort of. When that car went around the country 100 years ago, the federal amendment was stalled. The Equal Rights Amendment is stalled. We need to get it basically back on the road to equality, and here's how we're going to do it. We need a joint resolution in both the House and the Senate in Congress, because it's up to the Congress and the states to amend the Constitution, not the president and not the courts. This resolution was first introduced when Virginia became the 38th state. Thanks to Speaker Pelosi, she got a vote on the floor within a week of that happening. And then what happened? COVID happened. It got stalled in the Senate. We couldn't move it through. And then what happened? Well, we lost the House and the Senate.
Right.
We're going to get the House and Senate back again. You know what else? We have this resolution that's been introduced every year. This year we went around to every member of Congress asking them to be a co-sponsor. All Democrats are co-sponsors. Okay, we got one Republican. Yeah. We know to get this through, we're going to need a House and a Senate of leadership that are pro-ERA. And now that we know we've got enough votes in the House and we'll figure out the rules in the Senate, we can move it through quickly. And guess what?
Wow.
No president can veto it because there is no role of the president. So, again, come over to our table. Thank you for doing this. Betty, you have just been... Thank you all. And sign for ERA. We'll keep you posted on all the progress. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to acknowledge a couple people in the audience. We have unfortunately, Mayor Herr planned to be here. Mayor Kali Herr, you will recall, was the chief author for years of the state ERA bill, but she had to leave town, so she sent her emissary, Jennifer O'Rourke, here. Give you a wave, Jennifer. We also have, from the Ramsey County, we've got Tara Jevon Singh. Where'd she go? She's over here. Tara, Commissioner Jevon Singh is here to cheer us on, right? In her white. And thank you for your white too, Jen. Okay, the next speaker up is Megan Peterson, the Executive Director of Gender Justice and our huge partner in Minnesotans for Equal Rights.
Hi everyone, thank you so much. Really happy to be here. Megan, we have another organization called Gender Justice Action. I just have to throw that in there. I'm going to talk about the election, and that's the organization I'm going to talk about the election under. I had a whole speech, but I'm just going to cut to it. This building is really stuck. You know, as we're all seeing, common sense legislation around keeping ourselves and our families and our children safer is stuck in a deadlocked house. I don't want to be there again next January. The ERA is ready to go. It is the opportunity for Minnesotans to do the un-Minnesotan thing, say what we want, put our values directly, explicitly detailed into our state constitution. What we do in this state, even as the federal government works to undermine the Voting Rights Act, which they basically decimated, undermine the Civil Rights Act. We're waiting for a decision from the Supreme Court any day now that will undermine Title X, the protections of Title X. We're seeing, legitimate conversation. Well, I don't think it's legitimate, but people really on TV talking about repealing the 19th Amendment. That is a conversation happening in America today.
Oh my God.
It's absurd. We cannot take any of these rights for granted, which is why we have to do the most that we can do in Minnesota as Minnesotans and amend our state's highest governing document, our state constitution, with our values, put them in there and say, no, this is how we want to move out of authoritarianism. We are no longer going to allow the government to target our Somali neighbors, our immigrant neighbors, our trans family and friends, our LGBTQ cousins and sisters and wives. Like, we're not doing it anymore. We are saying this is what we want from our government. And we're going to do it in January. And then it's going to go on the ballot for November 2028. And we're all going to vote it in. But we have to win this election. We need majorities in the House and Senate. We need pro-equality majorities. It should not be hard in this day and age to get them. But it's going to take all of us out in the streets, knocking the doors. I want you all in your caucus meetings, in your town halls, asking every single candidate, will you put the Minnesota ERA first in January 2027? Let's not just pass it in 2027. Let's pass it first. Let's get out of the way. Clear this hurdle of the legislature and actually get to start talking to Minnesota voters, because we know they're with us. We just need to give them a chance. Give them a chance to say yes. So thank you. I'm excited to be in this fight with you, and let's go.
LFG, y'all, LFG, okay? I want to point out one other dignitary in the crowd that I see, Commissioner Kevin Anderson from Hennepin County. Thanks for coming. And next we have, and finally for our speakers, we have two representatives from the Women's Foundation of Minnesota. One woman who is part of the Young Women's Initiative, and her name is Avery Thompson. And then our wonderful partner who will be speaking also for Minnesotans for Equal Rights, Sarah Gangelhoff. Come on up, ladies.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Gangelhoff, and I'm the Director of Advocacy and Innovation for the Women's Foundation of Minnesota. We're proud to be here as a member of the Minnesota for Equal Rights Coalition, a diverse coalition working together to ensure that Minnesotans can vote for equality on their ballot.
Yes.
We're also proud to join a long line of advocates fighting for equality across the country. Here in Minnesota, we believe in freedom, fairness, and equality for everyone with no exceptions. Today, we're here to make that belief a reality by again asking our elected officials to advance the ERA at both the state and the federal level.
Yes.
The Minnesota ERA is about ensuring that every person, no matter who they are, has equal protection under the law. Like generations before us, we have learned that simply relying on the best intentions of those in power does not and will not protect us. Constitutional protections, however, are the strongest and most lasting safeguards of our rights. Yeah. It's true that gender and racial inequalities persist in Minnesota. For example, the gender wage gap hasn't narrowed over the past decade, and a significant factor is gender bias and discrimination. On average, Minnesota women make 81 cents for every dollar a man makes. And for women of color, it's even lower. If you add that up over a lifetime, a woman of color in Minnesota loses more than $1 million over the course of her career. And a white woman loses almost $500,000. So where does the Minnesota ERA come in? The ERA would give us one of the strongest legal tools we have to combat cases of discrimination like gender wage discrimination. Our communities and our rights are all interconnected, all of us are. When one of our communities is targeted, whether it's attack on reproductive care, immigrant rights, trans rights, it weakens protections for all of us and leaves us all less safe. Advancing the Minnesota ERA is how we stand together, and we say that no one is left out, no one is left behind. And our work cannot stop at Minnesota's borders. As you've heard, the United States Constitution does not explicitly guarantee equal rights on the basis of sex. A federal ERA would change that, ensuring that equality is not dependent on your zip code, but a guarantee nationwide. And finally, this is about democracy. Minnesotans here deserve the opportunity to vote on equality. It is time for our legislature to pass the ERA, place it on the ballot, and trust the people to decide the future of our state. We can do better for this generation and those that come to make sure they don't experience the same kind of discrimination and hardship that we and our elders have faced. Here to speak more on that is Avery Thompson, a recent college graduate and member of the Women's Foundation of Minnesota's Young Women's Initiative.
I'm a little taller than Sarah, so I can do like this. Well, good afternoon. My name is Avery Thompson, like you just heard, and I am a Greater Mankato cabinet member and recent Gustavus Adolphus College graduate. Thank you. I am so pleased and proud to be here today to advocate for adding the Equal Rights Amendment to the Minnesota Constitution and for ratifying it to the United States Constitution. As a young woman, I care greatly about enshrining equality for all. In recent years, I have watched a global backslide on women's equality, including attacks on reproductive freedoms, a widening of the gender pay gap, cuts to research funding for women's health care, and implementation of additional barriers to voting for us. I've also witnessed anti-transgender legislation being passed into law, seen targeted discriminatory operations enacted in my community, and experienced the terrifying silences that fall over my friends when we hear that yet another political hypothetical has become our reality, limiting our power, rights, and futures. This is not the America and not the Minnesota I envision for myself or future generations. I have watched older generations of women and gender-expansive people fight for my constitutional equal rights, and today I stand here on their shoulders, advocating for future generations to have the rights that I currently do not have. Laws, like you heard, can be easily changed or overturned by future legislatures or courts, but a constitutional amendment would provide a firm and lasting foundation that ensures our rights are protected, regardless of future political shifts. The rights we seek to protect through the Equal Rights Amendment are deeply connected throughout all communities, and I truly believe would benefit every American if passed. Today, I'm calling for the Equal Rights Amendment to be added to the Minnesota State Constitution and United States Constitution to guarantee that everyone has equal rights under the law. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to wrap it up here just by saying, first of all, thank you for coming again. We just love you all so much. I want to just say that Minnesota knows something about neighboring. Don't we? We know something about neighboring. And for our national folks, you may not know that Minneapolis citizens, have been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize for neighboring. And the Twin Cities has been given the John F. Kennedy Jr. Profiles of Courage Award for neighboring. That's why we're here. Oh, we've got another chief author who actually passed the resolution to Congress to enact the 28th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, Representative Kristen Bonner. Say hi, Kristen. Lovely to have you. She probably hasn't slept in 24 hours, but she's here. And so let me just say, be sure and sign the petition here. Get your picture in the car if you want. Walk down to the Suffrage Memorial, which is just 300 yards down here on the mall. And remember, vote equality, elect equality, elect equality, vote equality. So let's elect candidates who will vote equality. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you to our musicians. Thank you, everybody.
Anybody who wants to go to the Suffrage Memorial, if you follow me, I will.
Perfect. Thank you.
How's it going?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, just so everybody knows, we have one more event this afternoon. As soon as you're done